podcast, but I'm excited about this.
And it's good to have a conversation outside of you on the Peloton. So it's great, man. Yeah. But hey, look, we had an issue here that we're getting a lot of questions on, and I wanted to clear up just some of the confusion. We're going to do our best to do it. We're hearing all of these bill numbers being thrown around Capitol Hill. And by the way, Tommy is an expert on everything on Capitol Hill, around the federal government bureaucracy. His takes on this are right, they're good, they're strong. And so that's why we asked him to come in here to kind of go through this. We've heard HR 1, we've heard S1, now we're at HR 4. It's basically HR infinity, what's happening right now. And as you saw from the title of this, it has to do with a federal government, effectively a federal government takeover of our elections. And that's, something that's typically dealt with the states and local governments. And so I just wanted to just catch us up on what HR 4 is and what the left is proposing right now.
But one thing to know, and this is kind of a nerdy little factoid, is that if you are an HR single-digit number, HR 1, HR 2, HR 3, that means you have been deemed a major legislative priority of the majority. Okay, Democrats are in the majority in the House and Senate right now, and so HR 1, S1, HR 4, these are major legislative priorities. As a matter of fact, HR 1, which is a federal takeover of elections, which was their first attempt at a federal takeover of elections, was HR 1 last Congress in the House as well.
So they're hitting it hard.
Well, this is a major priority of theirs. Yeah. Some of them have been caught saying things like, we can't maintain the majority, we can't win elections unless we pass HR 1 and HR 4. It also means that these are bills that are exclusively supported by the Democrats. And I just want to stay there for a second. Should we let one party set the rules of elections in this country for the entire federal government? As a matter of fact, the way we run elections is on the state and local level. And there's great protection and security in that, because one precinct can have a problem and the rest of the nation's election results are still solid and secure. Election tabulation, election rules, regulations, they should not be consolidated in Washington. They should abide by the principle of federalism that's contained in the 10th Amendment, and let's let the states and localities run elections, and they do a nice job of that.
But let me just stop you there. And it's not only just the federal government. I mean, we're seeing now in the state of play in Congress that we see this name, Senator Joe Manchin, West Virginia. I mean, this is like, it's not only coming down to the federal government now, it's coming down to one person within the federal government, a senator. And so just briefly, and by the way, I just wanted to say, folks, if you have questions, put it in the chat. We want to interact with you here. We'll read them live. We'll get to them. So please feel free to do that. But Tommy, just cover his role right now, where it stands. Is it still HR 4 hinging on him?
Absolutely. Just about every bill, the Senate, as everyone knows, is tied 50-50. 50 Republicans, 50 Democrats.
Yeah.
And in the Senate, under most circumstances, you need 60 votes to end debate. You need 60 votes to get to the stage where the Senate is ready to pass a bill. In order to do an end run around that cloture rule, there are a couple different things that could happen. They could use a special process that is specific to budgetary items called reconciliation, or they could use the nuclear option, and with only 50 votes, they could forever change the rules, break the rules of the Senate to change the rules, and pass legislation, ordinary legislation, on a 50-vote threshold. That would be a devastating blow to deliberation in the Senate, and it would open the floodgates for the progressive agenda. But that brings me to Joe Manchin. Joe Manchin is one of the Democratic senators who has said, I'm not interested in going there. I'm not interested in nuking the filibuster, so to speak. But that puts the pressure on him with every issue. Yeah. Because then the natural question is, well, would you nuke the filibuster for this? Would you nuke the filibuster for this? And what the Democrats have done of late is they have made election policy, election law about race. Yeah. And they have said that what conservatives want to do is suppress the vote. And they have made their cause federalizing elections into a civil rights cause. I think that's utterly backwards. What conservatives want to do is make it easier to vote and harder to cheat. Mm-hmm. And we believe the state and local federalized system of elections does that. Yeah. Anyway, that's why Joe Manchin is central.
It just seems so incredible to me, and we hit this earlier, but it's just incredible to me that this really special part of our beautiful country, our election process, is in the hands of one man and basically his party. It really is scary.
That's true, and I'll go one further and just throw a little bit of a wrench in here. Joe Manchin published an op-ed in a West Virginia newspaper that said he does not support S1. About 2 weeks later, he voted to advance S1. Now, that vote that he voted for still failed. It did not achieve cloture, but 2 weeks later, he voted to advance it. Not to pass it finally, but voted to advance it. We just real quick need to define HR 4, and then there was a question about the Texas Democratic legislator, which I think we should answer. But HR 4 is a fallback position. If they can't get S1, what they want to do is HR 4, which is a Voting Rights Act reauthorization. But the central crux of that legislation is an accusation that certain states, red states, have racist intent in setting their election laws. And in those cases, they set the DOJ up to intervene and to supplant their own version of election laws in those states, to basically have the federal government take over making election law in those states. It's been deemed in the past unconstitutional by the Supreme Court, and this will be another attempt to get that done.
And even though one of our experts, Hans von Spakovsky here, is talking about how this HR 4, now it's even worse, because now it puts it in the hands of the Justice Department, which of course is a partisan thing, but it also has a lot of holdover people from different administrations that may be biased one way or another. It's not necessarily fair.
Well, unelected bureaucrats would be sort of a charitable way to describe these career progressives that have infiltrated places like the DOJ.
Yeah. Hey, so we've got questions. Again, if you want to have a question, please do so. I'd love to know where you're from. Type in where you're from, and even who are your representatives, your representatives in the states that you're in, the districts that you're in. Let's see here. We've got a question here. Where was it here? Hey, Philip, where was that? With the Texas legislator?
Texas Democratic legislator.
Oh, it's from Facebook. Yeah.
So let me explain what's going on with that.
Please.
Texas, during this legislative session, has been trying to pass a great electoral reform law. They want to tighten up their election reform laws, and the Democrats in Texas, you need a supermajority to establish a quorum to act. And so a lot of Democrats in that state got on 2 private planes yesterday afternoon, fled the state, and flew to Washington, D.C. If you go on Twitter, you can see some pictures of them. I think there's one with a Texas legislator carrying a case of Miller Lite on a private jet. I'm not kidding.
Really?
Yeah. And they all got big smiles on their face.
Wait, were they wearing masks?
No, of course not. No masks. It wasn't. I mean, everybody listening to this has had to wear a mask while they fly.
Yes.
The only people that don't have to wear a mask while they fly are people who are flying private, or people drinking Miller Lite, I guess. And so
you can't really drink Miller Lite with a mask on, dude.
So they're They're here in Washington. They're not doing their jobs. Yeah. They are denying the Republicans the ability to act. The thing that's going to happen, though, at some point, the Texas government's going to run out of money. And the governor has not yet signed the budget, if I'm not mistaken. And they're going to have to return to the state to act on the budget, and then the Republicans will be able to pass those bills.
All right, so let's move on to another question here. Is it correct to say that these federal election bills, if passed, would preempt all state elections, and would HR 1 or HR 4 be constitutional?
It is correct to say it would preempt state laws. That is the point. Yeah. The point is for the Democrats in the Congress to be setting federal election laws rather than the Democrats. No, I don't think it's constitutional. It would certainly get litigated. Yeah. Piece by piece would be litigated. That I think is a very important question. Yeah. Well, it's not going to weigh in the consideration.
I was talking with Hans earlier, prepping for this, Hans von Spakovsky, and he said it's almost certainly unconstitutional. But what that says is that just puts it in the hands of the whole Mark Levin thing, 9 imperfect people in black robes. We're putting the hands of our democracy essentially in the hands of the courts, and we hate for it to even get to that position.
That's true, and I believe strongly in Article 1, and every member of the Article 1 branch of the government should ask themselves before they vote on it, is this constitutional? The answer is plainly no. I'm not sure that, well, obviously, they voted on this legislation in both chambers, and every single Democrat has disagreed.
Yeah, really good question here. Will they still try to sneak parts of the voting changes into the infrastructure bill? And would it pass with 50 votes?
Well, so the infrastructure bill is a very complicated question.
Yeah.
There are two infrastructure bills. One is going to proceed on reconciliation, which is the partisan route, where Democrats are only going to pass this by themselves. They'll absolutely try to sneak voting changes into that bill. Not only that, they're going to try to sneak, for instance, other liberal priorities, the Green New Deal, but what I'm most worried about is a massive amnesty package going in reconciliation. This next reconciliation bill may be the last train leaving the station for the sort of Biden administration legislative honeymoon, and so it's going to be a Christmas tree of liberal priorities. The worst part about that is there is a bipartisan infrastructure deal that in a lot of ways is enabling that partisan reconciliation bill. So if a moderate Democrat is able to say, hey, I voted for this bipartisan bill as well as the reconciliation bill, they're intrinsically linked together. And so in my view, the bipartisan infrastructure bill, which is way too much money, $1.2 trillion on liberal priorities, no less, is very suspect.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny, too, because a lot of people would, sticking with infrastructure, we went from a President Trump who was constantly talking about infrastructure, passing something like that. And now we have President Biden who's constantly talking about infrastructure. But
these
are
air quotes.
Air quotes.
It's not infrastructure.
Right. And that's what I wanted you to. Yeah. I mean, it's a like you said, a Christmas tree, a grab bag of liberal policies.
Yeah, infrastructure is one of those words where it's in the eye of the beholder, I guess, here in Washington. We think about roads and bridges. The left thinks about just about anything you can spend money on.
Yeah. So one other question that I wanted to get in here with election stuff. Why? This is a great question, actually. Why does so much of the mainstream media refer to these bills as election reform, in quotes?
Let me be charitable to the mainstream media. They're just lazy.
Yeah.
I won't say they're dishonest, but they're just lazy. They take the left's talking points as fact, and they turn them into news reports.
Yeah.
If you read the bill, it's very easy to see that that's not what this is. But the way you know, and there was another comment, the way that you know that's true is there are election reform bills in the states, in Georgia, in Florida, in Iowa, and should be in Texas. Those are actually reforming the election processes in those states, and they're literally referred to as voter suppression bills. The Major League Baseball All-Star Game is supposed to be in Atlanta, Georgia today, and it's not because the Major League Baseball bought the lie. And it's an outright lie. Actually, it's a voter suppression bill.
Hey, Philip, can you post Hans's PragerU video? Hans von Spakovsky just did a PragerU video on the Georgia election law. It's a great primer on it if you guys are interested in watching it. But as we post that, feel free to do that after we're done here. But I wanted to move on a little bit to another issue. And I've been wondering this ever since 2019, and you know Capitol Hill better than anybody, Tommy. I'm wondering how your job has changed, and we've had a lot of questions on this. I'm wondering how your job has changed since the squad came in 2019.
The squad is a powerful force in Washington.
Okay.
I'm not kidding. And let me explain that. Chuck Schumer's terrified that Ocasio-Cortez is going to primary him. And so he can't open up. He can't expose a flank on his left.
Wait, so you're saying that it's possible that she could be the next senator from New York?
That's what he's worried about, wow. Absolutely.
Okay.
And she's incredibly persuasive to a certain audience, and it's a very large and engaged audience. Her audience, which exists all over the country in a certain age cohort on social media, she's very persuasive with them. Those people will put extraordinary amounts of pressure on Democratic leadership, on Nancy Pelosi and on Chuck Schumer. So how has it changed? It gets more difficult, I think, for Nancy Pelosi, but it also shifts the center of gravity of the Democratic Party even further left. And in some ways we get desensitized to that, but in some ways the Democratic Party's agenda, the progressive agenda, is socialism because of how far they've been able to drag it. And politics is about fear. And I genuinely think Senator Schumer is afraid that Ocasio-Cortez is going to primary.
Wow. Yeah, and I've seen this, and I remember we had you on Heritage Explains podcast early 2019, and you referred to it, though, you were a lot more optimistic because you said this is an opportunity to contrast the left from what we would say on the right. And I'm wondering if you feel like we've been able to do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely I do.
Yeah.
And that's what it should be about, right? Let's get ideas and let's shine bright lights on them, and let's look at the consequences. Let's look at the intent. Let's look at the outcomes. Let's look at all of that. We're not conservatives. We're not afraid of ideas.
Yeah.
We're not afraid of popular people. We're not afraid of persuasive people. We think our ideas help the most people.
Yeah.
We think our ideas are best for the poor. We think our ideas are best for young people, are best for old people, and we will debate them anytime, anywhere. Frankly, that's kind of their attitude as well. And I think there has been a little bit of a clash of ideas. But I also think it's an opportunity to expose the dangers of socialism. We're talking about the Squad, which is very popular, while Cuba is in the news for sort of a major meltdown.
Yeah.
Lack of total human decency and freedom in Cuba has led to protests in the streets, and that is where socialism and communism goes.
Well, let's go there. It is a good question here. In what ways has the left become disillusioned about socialism? Aren't we seeing proof of its failures in Venezuela and Cuba? Aren't we seeing it? Happening?
We are seeing it happening.
Okay, so what? How is it still even a thing right now? I don't understand it. It's pretty basic.
Yeah.
Cameras are everywhere.
Yeah. Look, we believe that freedom leads to flourishing, and that's fundamental to the American experiment. The proof of that is written in global world history. We believe that's evident, but we're ready to keep making the case. And just about every week we have more examples of that in the news.
Yeah, well, it looks like, appreciate that. And it looks like my mom, she sent me a message. It says, Tim, she sent you a question in Messenger. Okay. Well,
Hey, Tim's mom.
Hey, Mom, love you, but I don't have Messenger. So, hey, Phil, we can, I think we can pretty much delete that. Well, Mom, why don't you just text me, Just text me. I've got my Apple Watch on. I can read it from here. I love you, Mom. Mom was just on my episode of Heritage Explains. She was explaining why the China 3-child policy, government and economics was not my parents' reason for having children. Theirs was a higher, more lofty reason.
No kidding. And look, that's where socialism leads. Right?
Correct.
You need permission from the government to have children, and that's just fundamentally opposite of what will lead to human flourishing. And when you sit down and think about it, that's evident, and we hope that truth rings clear.
Let's head back one more question on elections, and we'll move on to, I think, the most important question of Facebook Live, YouTube Live, Heritage Explains Live. Why is the federal government getting involved when state legislators have the authority in state elections? They have the authority.
Well,
constitutional.
That's about power. That's
okay.
If you own the power, if you set election laws. Let me ask you this. If one party sets the election laws, which party would you bet on to win the next election?
Yeah, probably that part.
That's what it's about. And they'll admit it. They'll say, and I said this earlier in the show, they will say things like, well, we can't maintain the majority unless we pass H.R. 1. Out loud, they'll say that in public.
Yeah.
So it is about power. It's about keeping and maintaining power. And by the way, our Constitution is fundamentally about limiting the power that those people have, and so they're in direct contrast.
So you were telling me earlier you were on the treadmill catching up on the most important question, which is the NBA Finals. They're happening right now. Mm-hmm. If you didn't know that, it's probably because the ratings are almost near an all-time low. I'll just catch you up here. Currently, the Suns have a 2-1 lead over the Phoenix Suns have a 2-1 lead over the Milwaukee Bucks, but again, you wouldn't know that because the ratings are in the tank. And Clay Travis said this, he's a commentator, sports commentator, I'll quote him, he said, "It's a certainty if you get woke in the world of sports and you are a sports league, you end up going broke. And that's what's happening with the NBA. What say you, Tommy?
I have a rooting interest in the NBA Finals. I'm a Wake Forest alum, and I love Chris Paul, and he's on the Phoenix Suns. And so I'm watching.
Okay.
I have to confess that before I give this answer.
Okay.
I think, and with all due respect to Clay Travis, I like Clay Travis. I think what Americans want is politics out of their sports.
Yeah.
I think they want politics out of the brands that they enjoy. I think they want politics out of so many features of their lives. Michael Jordan is famous for having said they wanted him to get involved in a political issue, and he's famous for having said Republicans buy sneakers too. And you know what? They hate him for that, but he sold a lot more sneakers than LeBron James.
Yeah.
Because LeBron James has dove first into politics in what I think is a really idiotic way. I love sports. I'm a big sports fan. I want to enjoy sports without having to have woke ideology jammed down my throats. And I think that that's what we all want.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just funny. I saw it on Twitter. They put those ads in your feed, and it's the NBA promoting the NBA Finals, except it's not the Phoenix Suns, it's not the Milwaukee Bucks. It's actually old clips of Michael Jordan making the winning shot and things like that. So I mean, it just shows you how they're trying to get people to come back by showing what sports used to be like, with a guy who said conservatives buy sneakers too.
Yeah, well, and look, and everybody knows what happened with the All-Star game. It was moved out of the state of Georgia on the basis of a lie.
Right.
I will venture a guess ratings for the All-Star game, not just because Ronald Acuna Jr. tore his ACL, but for the wokest ideology, will be in the tank as well. I just think Americans aren't going to stand for that. Yeah. We'll watch college sports. We'll watch our kids' sports and be happy with that.
Somebody said you guys have more money than the NBA. I know for a fact that isn't true. I checked my checking account today. There's no way I'm close to that. Maybe you are. I mean, you're a VP, so you might. But
I don't even have a signature sneaker. You can't go out there and buy the Tommy Binion 1.
You should. You should be able to. Darn it. That's it. Well, okay. And one other thing though, I wanted to get this on you because you mentioned it. I'll just share this. I think that this is a trend, not just the NBA, not just Major League Baseball. This is a trend all across corporate boardrooms in America. Is this pull to woke, this corporate wokeism? You know, we've done a lot of stuff, and we're seeing this more and more be brought up throughout America, and we're seeing the oil companies appointing people to the board who don't like oil. And they want to get rid of it. They want to change it. And this is just another avenue now it's turning into. We always focus on Washington, D.C., but now we're focusing on our boardrooms as well.
Yeah, it's going to continue to invade our lives until it gets so bad that there is massive pushback. Yeah. I think that they've overstepped already. I think that the pushback already exists. They may not know that they're alienating their customers, but they are alienating their customers. And in the end, somebody's going to come along and offer a product that's just as good that doesn't shove politics down your throat. And we'll enjoy those products.
And our last question to round it out with the elections, will we get to the bottom of election fraud? Can we ever trust election results again? That's a big question, Tommy.
Well, elections are conducted in a very decentralized way. On the state and local level. And that is where you can have the most influence as American citizens, is on your local and state governments. You can go and be a poll watcher. You can go and sit in your polling location and watch what happens and watch the counting of the votes. So you tell me, if you can go and do that, if we keep that system where it is decentralized and elections are conducted in the elementary school just outside your neighborhood, and you can sit in that gym and you can watch the poll workers watch, can you trust that? Yeah. The alternative future is H.R. 1 and H.R. 4, where the DOJ sets the rules and the counting of the ballots is done the same way everything the federal government does everything. So if we keep the system we have now, if you can engage in your state and local government, then you can watch the ballots get counted and you can trust your own eyes.
Yeah. Tommy, it's It's been awesome, man. What a great conversation. Everybody, thank you so much for your questions, your comments. We didn't get to all of them, but that's what happens, you know. That's what happens. We are going to be back probably sometime next week, but we just wanted to try this out and make sure that everybody was alive and well out there. Thank you so much for participating. Yeah, and Tommy, we'll see you out there running along the mall in the beating sun here in Washington, D.C.
Catch me outside.
How about that? And I just, you know,